Okay, so my thoughts on chapter 3 was one, that chapter is 2 hours of reading. No matter how you chop it, flip it, it's a lengthy chapter. Okay, that chapter is from page 84 all the way to page 127. But he's telling a vast history of different countries from Italy, France, England, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, and different regions at this time. And he's explaining how two reformations happened. So, okay, in chapter 1, he introduces the ideas of three inventions that helped bring the Europeans into dominance: gunpowder, the printing press, and the compass. So in this chapter, he's talking about how the printing press, which was invented in Germany, at this time, most of the writings were done in Latin. And what's going to end up happening is, in the 14th century, people are going to want to return to the classics, right? During the Renaissance in Italy. So they return to the classics, but then after they return to the classics and they start reading Cicero and all of these Romans, it creates what they refer to as the humanist or humanism movement. So later on, so that's in chapter 2. In chapter 3, building on that, the humanist movement is going to have huge impact because people are not just going to want to read the Bible in Latin because most people were illiterate. Only the clergy, the cardinals, and the Pope could read. And certain people who had special education, the vast majority of people in this time period were illiterate. So when the printing press comes out and the revolution of this information being dispersed is going to have huge ramifications. It's not going to start the Reformation, but it's going to be a catalyst, as he says in the ending of the chapter, John Merriman. But notwithstanding all this going on, the problem is that Europe had all of these different religions, beliefs, and it was a vast empire. And after the fall of Rome, the Italian city-states, they're going to vie for power. So he talks about the city-states in Italy, and the Pope at this time, who is trying to keep people believing in their system. And the printing press is going to help threaten this, along with the fact that Europe is decentralized. Okay, for a time period when France is gaining its power, the kings kidnap the popes for about 60 something years, and they have to reside in France. Okay. At one point in time, they had 3 different popes at the same time. One in Rome, one in France, and one in other places. While all of this is going on, okay, the printing press, people like Martin Luther, the people who were the predecessors to Martin Luther, they are going to start reading the Bible for themselves. Calvin, these people are going to start reading the Bible for themselves. And before, everybody had to believe what the clergy wanted them to believe. But with people being able to study and read the Bible for themselves, then reinterpret it, this is going to have huge ramifications for the way people believe. So certain people are going to believe that that everything that the Pope is saying is not necessarily correct through their own interpretations. So what ends up happening is that if you don't believe what the Pope is saying, then the Pope's military arm is going to put you to death. So they burned people at the stake. John Wycliffe in England, they burned him at the stake. They didn't kill Martin Luther only because he had friends in high places that protected him. But multiple people are going to be burned at the stake. Hundreds, right? And this is a precursor to the witch trials. But women are going to be burned at the stake. Men are going to be burned at the stake. A separate group called the Anabaptists, they believe that if you that children should not be baptized, essentially, because they are innocent, and adults should be baptized because they have more understanding. They are going to ironically drown them. So it was the two reformations was one, people not believing in the Catholic way anymore, and then they're going to split into different fractions of Protestantism. So Henry VIII of England, he's going to split the entire Church of England, Anglican Church, from their belief system, from the Pope, because he wanted to divorce his wife, and this was against the rules of the Catholic faith. So he went through a series of wives because he wanted to bear a son, and he ended up killing one of his wives. Different things happened with his wives, but basically he got enough power to make his own rules. And different sects in Germany, England, France, a lot of different places, so many sub religions of the Protestants or different sects of Christianity is going to be created. Now, question: why are so many different sects of Christianity exist? Well, this is the reason why. Especially if you grew up in the West, you're used to seeing so many different types of church: the Mormon church, the Catholic church, the Lutheran church, the Methodist church, the Protestant church, the Baptist church. This entire movement from the 1300s all the way up until the 16th, 1700s, this is the reason why. They had two reformations. So the counter reformation is going to be the Holy Roman Emperor or Empire, and both the Emperor and the Empire and the Pope trying to regain people who are converting to these other religions. So this is leading up to the religious wars of Europe of the 16th and 17th century. And this is just simultaneously while this is going on, the conquistadors and the people that's coming to the Americas, when they talk about fleeing, the founding fathers were fleeing persecution, so they came to the Americas. Well, that's the vague 6th grade answer that they give. What they're not actually talking about is that people were being burned alive, people were being drowned, people were being tortured. The Spanish Inquisition and their torture methods, medieval torture methods, the things that were going on at the time, is the reason that they were fleeing religious persecution, And so in the Americas, that's the same thing that they're going to do to the Native Americans and to the Africans and to anyone else that they could find over here to convert to Catholicism. Because in Europe at the time, there were these religious wars taking place at the same time that Hernan Cortez, Christopher Columbus, and all of these people are coming to America. Simultaneously in Spain, Italy, Germany, and all these other countries in Europe, these prominent countries or countries that will come into prominence, were these religious wars. And that's essentially what chapter 3 was about. It ended with talking about the role of women in society. Women were really they could be put to death. They had little rights. They were seen as the reason that sin was there. Women were not allowed to learn to read or write at this time period. Women in rural areas that were poor would be burned. Later in the 17th century, during the Salem witch trials, these same women, a lot of them are going to be put to death, burned at the stake, because they inherited property. So it was a huge war against how you were to believe in Christianity. Another thing that I left out is the sale of indulgences. If you take, in order, the Roman popes was basically, they needed money to fund the many wars and things that they had going on with their state. So they would basically say, hey, if you give me money, that would take your loved one out of purgatory. So people was spending money to protect their loved ones. Or, hey, if you did something bad and you sinned, then pay the Pope this indulgence fee, and then that is going to reduce whatever time you had to spend in hell. The tithes that came from being serfs, they wanted to change the status of serfs because serfs was owned by the Lord. So they wanted to change the status of serfs, so serfs could be taxed and had to pay a tithe. This goes down to really, how is the government going to be run? Is it going to be run by the church? Is it going to be run by a secular religion? And people like Calvin, he said that it should be a mixture of both, that they should work together. And so, in a nutshell, that's what chapter 3 was about, with speaking in generalities.